Hey guys, so I'm back again to do this video. It's going to be again about basically what I've been talking about, the mentality behind slavery, because I think that black people have a tendency to forget who they're dealing with, and then they want to act surprised when we see things like the Trayvon Martins and the Mike Browns and things of that sort. So people want to get confused and they want to be outraged by the fact that there's not only are these things happening, but there's so many white people that's dismissive of what's actually going on in the killings, and they justify it. And I'll say again, and I've always been saying that slavery ended, but the mentality went absolutely nowhere, because again, we already know, and I'm going to keep starting my videos out with reminding you guys that slavery wasn't just about free labor. It wasn't about them being forced to build America, cultivate fields, and pick cotton and stimulate the economy, build the economy, basically. Oh my god, this hair is so annoying. So slavery wasn't just about that. It was also about killing, the African spirit, relieving them, beating out of them their sense of spirituality, and indoctrinating them to the ways of white psychopathology, basically. And so there's a mentality that's behind it that hasn't died with the when slavery died. These people didn't want to end it. They liked their demonic actions. They liked raping and killing and torturing Africans. They enjoy doing that, and I think that's something that a lot of black people are having a hard time coming to terms with, because for some reason they seem to think that because a white person has sex with them or shows some kind of interest in them or exploit them for their music and their culture and their sports talents, then somehow racism doesn't exist anymore, and somehow white people have erased centuries of hate towards black people. Somehow a lot of black people tend to believe that this is what happened, and that's not the reality of it. The reality of it is there were laws put into place as a backup plan to slavery. When you have a specific plan, you're not going to not have a backup plan, especially not a plan as elaborate and strategic as enslaving black people and trying to kill their spirits and basically trying to exterminate black people, because that's really what's going on right now. And I think a lot of black people don't want to come to terms with that. So in addition to doing all the atrocious behaviors that they did back in the past, they're now trying to keep up this myth of them being the paradigm of morality. And so what they have to do is now they have to try to convince the world that black people, when they went and stole the Africans from their country, they need to convince people now, this new generation of kids, because they're putting it in the history books. So now they need to convince them that they were workers. Workers implies that you're going to get paid, and there wasn't one check wrote to one black person. And workers don't have guns held against them. Workers aren't being raped and forced to work, and then when workers try to get out of the work, they don't get their limbs cut off and hung from trees and beat brutally. So this is what's going on, and I think a lot of black people are either complacent and careless and oblivious, or they just feel like it's better to go with the flow of racism and kind of just sit there and be comfortable. And I think if they just don't fight against it, then somehow it's going to go away, and that's really not going to happen. What's going to end up happening is things is going to get worse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it my duty to make sure these things are not forgotten. And so there's a link in the description, and there is a video that's going to detail some more of the disgusting acts on white people, that white people enforced on black people. And this is in the Congo, prior to, I do believe it was prior to antebellum slavery. These are some things that went down in the Congo during that time. And I really couldn't care less if it was before, during, or after. It's equally as disgusting and demonic. And so if you watch the link in the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. But what it is basically a lot of them, tricked black people, took advantage of the fact that, we're generally kind-natured people, you know, we're not trying to shun anyone. So when they went over there, you know, black people were being kind to them and welcoming, and this backfired. And so then they went in there forcing them to, you know, cultivate so that they could get rubber. They're forcing kids to do it as well. In the event that they didn't, they were chopping their hands off, and they didn't care whether these were kids or babies or whatever. Watch the video. It's just disgusting and disturbing. And the more that you watch these things and the more that you pay attention to, you really will see the type of people that you're dealing with. And then you'll be able to gauge the mindset of the people that you're dealing with. And it'll shed some light into why it is that people don't really care when you have the Mike Browns, why they'll justify it, why it was okay for everybody in America basically to see Eric Garner get strangled on the streets of New York, and why white people mostly justified it, saying, oh, he was overweight and he wasn't really strangled, although we all saw him get strangled. But suddenly now he died because he was overweight. He's been overweight probably his entire life, hadn't died yet until a cop strangled him on the streets of New York. But all of a sudden it was his obesity that killed him, not the cop that we saw strangling him out on the street. And so these are the people that we're dealing with, and this is a mindset that people instilled in their children. Like, you can't think that these people, these adults who had children, had this mentality and they didn't pass it down to their children, because that's how slavery lasted for so long, is because they passed it down from generation to generation. Their kids took on that belief system, and you can rest assured today, a lot of their kids still have that mentality. And, you know, you guys want to get confused, all of you that want to lay up with white people, men and women, black men and women, and you want to sit there and you want to think that because you're able to lay up and have sex with a white man or a white woman, that somehow the world is void of racism. Are we really overlooking the fact that the white men were raping their black slaves and having kids with them, and those kids, as well as the women that they were with, were still slaves? So why are we overlooking that? And now in today's society, we're being misled to believe that because the media wants to push out, you know, black men with white women specifically, and they're doing it for a reason. And if you think it's about just being able to love someone else, then, oh my God, this hair is going to like irritate me to death. Yeah, if you want to be confused about what it really is and you want to think they really want to promote free love, think about it like this and answer this question for me. Then why are they only promoting black men with white women in the media? You don't really see them promoting black men with Asians or Indians or Puerto Ricans. You mostly just see it with white people. And I'm going to tell you why. Because, and if someone wants to challenge this, name me one black man that is a celebrity. It can be celebrity. No, it just needs to be famous, because I'm not going to say celebrity or otherwise, because then you guys are going to give me fictitious people that supposedly are in your family, and I don't need to know what your family is doing, because there's no way for me to confirm that. So name me one celebrity black man that is with a white woman and going hard for the black community. Name me one. If somebody, and I'll wait, because I know this is just never going to happen. So I know I'm going to be waiting forever. I'll probably be 105 years old still waiting for somebody to name me one. Name me one, and then provide me some evidence of it, of one black man that's with a white woman that's going hard for the black community and supporting the black community. Just name me one. Somebody just has to name me one. And then, and then, you know, you can shut this whole theory down by naming me one, but you won't find one. And I've given it some great thought. You won't find one, because at the end of the day, when a black man is with a white woman, he becomes extremely weak. He alienates his community, and he takes on the mindset of the white woman that he's with. And you can best believe a lot of white women, just because they're having sex with you, and a lot of white men for the black women that want to go hard for the white men, they still have that same mentality. It doesn't matter how much white dick you suck or how many white vagina you dip into, they still see you the same as every other white person, as far as I'm concerned. So that being said, is you guys need to really start thinking about the mentality of these people. And they did a lot to try to keep you in a certain mentality. Which brings me to the book that I'm reading. So I'm reading this book. So this book that I'm reading. This book was actually published in the 1930s. The interesting thing is, although we're in 2015, which you can do the math on how many years that is, I believe that's what, 75 years. Yeah, that's about 75 years, give or take, whatever. It's about 75. So, yeah, because you were just at 60 to get to 2000, and then 75 to 2015. Yeah, so that's about 75 years ago. And then, despite the fact that that was so long ago since this book has been published, a lot of it rings so true. And I'm going to read a part out of it because it's so true, and I feel it speaks to what's going on now with our current situation. Most of what was going on in slavery was psychological more so than it was physical. Even when they took the women, the black women, and raped them in front of the black men, yeah, that was physical, but you can best believe it had more of a psychological impact than anything. I mean, what's more demeaning to a man or emasculating to a man than to have to watch another man rape his wife and he can't do anything about it? So that for sure had far more psychological ramifications than it did physically. And so to me, the work that they put into planning to get your mentality to be to where your mindset makes you physically no longer a threat to them is what's most important to me. And so I'm going to read this part of it, and I think that this really speaks to what's going on, and then I'll explain how. So this is just not even in the meat of the book. This is actually in the preface of the book. And so these are just some forethoughts of his. And then the rest of the book is basically the meat of it. And I would actually encourage everyone to get this book and to read it. It's very informative. It'll let you know a lot about what's actually going on with the mindset of black people today. Is very relevant. I actually got this on eBay for less than $5. So definitely get the book and read it. I think it's very informative. But this is the part that stuck out to me the most. It says, no systematic effort towards change has been possible. For, taught the same economics, history, philosophy, literature, and religion which have established the present code of morals, the Negro's mind has been brought under the control of his oppressor. The problem of holding the Negro down, therefore, is easily solved. When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary. Now, the thing about that is, it applies to today, because if you think about the part where he's saying, if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. If you don't see how that applies to reality right now, then you don't get the book, because you're not going to comprehend it. And then we have bigger issues, and you aren't somebody that I'm talking to. But for the people that understand this and get it, it'll reach them and it'll touch them. Because if you think about it now, and this is why I say I'm not going on a black male bashing crusade, but at the end of the day, they put work into this. They put work, they did planning, they had this well thought out plan on how to beat the black man down so that he's no longer a threat. And if you think for 1 minute that right now, in reality, black men are a threat to anybody, then you're not paying attention to what's going on. Black men are no longer a threat to anyone, because their mind is too... White people have their mind in such a strong chokehold and grasp. They're not worried about you. That's why cops can go around and shoot and kill black men, and they don't have a worry. They don't have to worry about even getting a citation from it or any repercussions from the black community. Because if you think about during the Rodney King times, when Rodney King got beat and that was just one person, white people were scared to come out their house at that point, because they already knew that's not going to fly. Now you're going to have to answer to the entire black community. And that's because the black men were more on point back then than they are now. Black men back then, they weren't preoccupied with buying Jordans and having expensive cars. That means absolutely nothing. They weren't worried about getting the ratchets. They didn't care about that. They were more united with their community. They were more invested in their women, and they had stronger bonds with them. So therefore, when they're more invested in their community, then it becomes harder for white people to penetrate that, because then they do have to worry about the ramifications of it. It's like, think back down to the Martin Luther King days when, and Rosa Parks, when they could get people to orchestrate a buff boycott. You can't get black people now to stop buying Jordans. You can't get them to do that. And so that's the problem. There was way more unity then, and it's like we don't have that. And it's because they spent so much time mind screwing you that you don't even think you're mind screwed. And if you don't think you have a problem, you're going to do absolutely nothing to address it.